we as an American society are right now doing what we always do. We're super hungover.
Mm,
We got blasted last night and we're
yeah.
on the down. We're miserable, throwing up.
Americans are binge drinkers too, so this
Yeah,
whole analogy is
we're
really aligning very
it's very good. We're throwing up and we're telling our friends we're never going to drink again.
never
This
again.
has to stop. Never going
Swear
to
into
do
the
it
porcelain
again.
god.
And then we feel better. And we do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. In a world that often pulls us apart, More in Common brings us back to what matters. Hosted by Gerren Taylor and Keith Richardson, this isn't your average podcast. It's a challenge to think deeper, question louder, and grow further. At More in Common, we work with NFL teams, tech companies, and professionals across industries to improve communication and foster compassion. And with a focus on emotional intelligence, we aim to bring a wealth of experience to help you navigate the complexities of human connection. We've never been more connected and yet more isolated. We want to explore the roots of that tension and offer a way back to what we all need: real human connection. Enjoy the show.
Welcome
Red leather,
back.
yellow leather.
He's at it again. Keep getting the warm ups on.
Yeah, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. What are they?
Ooh, okay. Now, all right. You know what? We're gonna go ahead and say that's enough for that.
Move on. We'll move on.
You know, it's
To
been a
today's
rough
show.
yeah, it's been a rough week anyway. So like let's just get into it.
Let's just stay low. Let's not be
Yeah.
happy.
Well, I like being happy. Don't get me wrong. I feel like there's a time and a place, for all that jazz.
I'm happy with the hat. I mean, the message is a
Oh, you
little
like this?
harsh. Yeah, the
But
message is
it's
a little harsh.
but not you though.
Oh, but not you. People
But not
are,
you.
but not
Yeah,
you. Because
yeah.
you aren't a people. Like,
You're a person.
you know, you know. Well
Funny
played, sir.
enough, this is actually a gag gift for my fantasy football league. So shout out to Gavin for
Mm,
hooking up what has
nice.
now
It
become part
just
of
it
my
just looks good.
my
Yeah.
apparel. Yeah, I like the design, and I'm not too mad at the message. In fact, because well, I mean, listen, let's go ahead and get the cat out of the bag. It's been an interesting week in America, and this wasn't even the conversation that we originally intended on having on this week's episode. We were going to talk about some other things, but the situation in the United States is such that we felt that it was a very important moment to have this particular conversation, especially because on this show we intend to help people have better conversations, make stronger connections through better conversations. And someone who, in some ways, some people can argue on this point, but in some ways was doing that. Charlie Kirk was assassinated at an event in Utah. And it's every time this kinds of things happen, and I don't know if you feel the same way exactly about this, Keith, but every time it happens, people always say, well, Americans, we're not like this, and there's no place for political violence in the United States. And sometimes I just don't think that's true. I think it's an oversimplification of the situation, right? Well,
I
like
think yeah, go ahead.
what if political violence does have a place in America, but not because we want it to, just because it's always been there and
Mm,
we haven't really dealt with it?
man, what a tee up right there. Because I think this is like just speaking in terms of what we're all about. Like to have honest conversations. I don't know if as an audience member you've ever been in a room, you're probably most likely with family. And there's that thing that no one talks about. And we all know it's there. I mean, the proverbial elephant in the room, right? We all know it's a thing, But let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about that around grandma. Let's not talk about that around mom. Let's not talk about that around dad. And it dramatically impacts the ability to have a relationship because you can't have honest conversations because there's just this thing that's always hanging. And you've ever been in that relationship and then all of a sudden that thing comes up and they're like, "Oh, I've been thinking about that too." Or if there's a breakup and you're just holding on, "Oh, it's so uncomfortable. Oh, I don't want to." And then you go to the other person and be like, "Hey, I've been really thinking. I don't know if the future of this relationship." And that person's like, "Oh, me too." Right? Like, and then all of a sudden that moment happens and it's like, "Oh, now we can actually navigate a discussion around this because we've opened up the doors."
But you've both been
And
thinking it all of this time and not saying anything to each other about it.
that's right. And like that's the nature of this topic. Like I'm gonna just put it out there. I've heard enough of it. There's no place for political violence. Hey, great, great. If that's what we all think, and that's how we all feel, I don't care how you got there. I don't care if it's because of Charlie Kirk. I don't care if it's because of Minnesota senator. I don't care if it's because of. We'll get to that later as far as the history goes. Like, but if we can all agree on that, then let's have a conversation about what that actually means,
Yeah. It reminds me of
right?
having someone dealing with substance abuse in the family, right? Or even an individual dealing with substance abuse, right? Until you admit that you have a problem, you won't take the steps necessary in order to resolve it, right? It's like this is our addiction and we can't admit that we're hooked to it. Every time we say never again, every school shooting, every attempted political assassination, we say never again, this shouldn't happen here, and then we pour another drink.
And we say, I can control it. I can do it. I don't have a problem. I can modify and moderate my intake. To what point? To what end? Right? And we all know that until you admit that you're an addict, right? You you're always like you're never going to fix that problem, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me so much too of like so we think about being an addict. I love the way you tie that, right? And then when we think about conversations, I mean, at the end of the day, all our brains process things differently. We have attention. We had Allison on months ago, Allison O'Brien from what was Echo Listening Intelligence, which is now LQ Listening Intelligence, talking about the different ways our brains process information, the way we internalize it, right? As the adage goes, you can't see the trees through the forest, or you can't see the forest through the trees. Well, the reason the adage is you can't see the trees through the forest in part is because 1,000 trees is exhausting. The forest is a simplification in our brains, right? But like, okay, I see a forest, just like if you paint a picture with a bunch of dots, you don't see all the dots. You see the picture that comes together. Or
Mhm.
if, a single thing that's lit up is lit up at night and goes in a circle, it looks like a big giant circle. It doesn't look like the thing bouncing from moment to moment. Our brain makes these connections. This is just the way it works, right? But some people don't see the forest through the trees. Like they get caught in the details. Now, it is an absolutely ridiculous binary in the spirit of 330 million people in this country, right? And like it's wildly oversimplified, but it's for the purpose, right? At the end of the
Mm.
day, when we think about the country and we think about our conversations, some people see all the blemishes. Some people see all the potential greatness or the historical greatness or whatever they think the nationalist point of view is. And others look at it and go slavery, look at it and go this, and look at it and go that, right? And then both of them are like, yeah, blah, 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 right? But we can't move in a direction that acknowledges and accepts the potential without recognizing the past.
Right.
In the same way, if you're an alcoholic, you don't admit it that you've had a problem, like every alcoholic who's ever been sober for a long period of time, they still go to AA after 40 years of sobriety and say, I'm an alcoholic, right? Because it's an anchor, it's a recognition that I haven't slipped up and I'm not going to slip up. So if we can't have conversations about our country's blemishes and what they are and accepting, like saying, we are this, then we can't be what we think we are. We will continue to pour that drink and at some point hit rock bottom. Question is, what's rock bottom?
Yeah, I mean, I get you. It's like you're saying, people don't want to accept that we are all of these things. Like in the forest analogy, right? Some people only want to see the trees, and some people only see the rotting part of it. Some people only see the beautiful canopies, and some people just want to burn it all down. And that, until we admit that that makes up the whole forest, then we're not going to deal with those issues, right? You're not seeing the blemishes. And to be forest blind to the whole thing is to ignore the structural issues that help perpetuate and create this violence.
Yeah, and I'll challenge one comment, like whether or not I don't think it's not that people don't want to. That's just what people see. And then when someone comes to you and says, "Look at that tree. It's got a blemish." There is a nature in us, especially that is perpetuated by in-group out-group bias and other things and judgments and all this other stuff, and we don't know how to manage it because of emotional awareness issues that we talk about all the time. The instinct is, yeah, but isn't the tree beautiful? Isn't the forest beautiful? Why are you so focused on that tree? Well, then that person can react and say, well, that tree appears to be diseased. Yeah, but don't get so caught up in that tree. And all of a sudden, we're having this wildly disparate conversation relative to the forest when at the end of the day, we both might actually recognize that the tree or the forest is beautiful. The person who has a cognitive perception difference that says, look at the tree, where are they going? Yeah, okay. So what's the negative is to that tree being diseased? Well, if we don't fix that tree, it could kill 1,000 acres of this forest.
Yeah,
And then we
absolutely.
lose the beauty of the forest. Oh, that's an interesting point. So what do we do going forward? How do we fix this? And that's where we're at. And that's what this conversation ends up being. There is no place for violence, political violence in America. Okay. I ideally agree with you. But if we look at history, there has been countless acts of political violence going back to 1791 in the Whiskey Rebellion.
Yeah. The legacy of KKK terrorism and lynchings, those weren't just pure racism. They were also about political power and control and a reaction to Reconstruction.
I mean, the amount of clashes that were done over slavery, the bleeding Kansas from 854 to 61, right? There's the caning of Charles Sumner,
Oh,
who
yeah.
was
I
attacked
remember
on the Senate floor.
I remember that. Not personally, but I remember learning about that.
Yeah. The assassination of Abraham Lincoln,
Yeah.
Reconstruction violence. And when we talk about Tulsa, right? We're talking about not just Tulsa. There are over 200
Yeah, Seneca
incidents at
Falls.
that
Yeah.
time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's the
Very similar.
Colfax massacre. There's the Wilmington coup and massacre. There's East St. Louis. Like, should we just keep listing them?
No, I mean
There's the
from there
Haymarket affair.
to JFK to January 6th to today with the assassinations on attempts on Trump and the Hortman family sadly dying in Minnesota
I mean, in the
and now
last
Mr.
5 years, in the see that goes back, right? That's the founding. That's the point. Then we go back the last 5 years. Gretchen Whitmer, right? There's a Judge Esther's family that was targeted and his son was killed, or her son, sorry, right? January 6th, you mentioned it. There was an attempt on Brett Kavanaugh, Nancy Pelosi, obviously Donald Trump, right? Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated. There's Gabby
Yeah.
Gifford from 2000. Like it's not, and so everybody has gone, what about these ones? What about these ones? Looking for a both sidism type of, if you're mad about this, be mad about this. No, reconcile.
Indeed.
Political
I mean,
violence
the
is part of our country.
the 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 trend line tends to show that Americans will choose violence as an answer. And
And
that's
what
the
is
history of a
political
country that's got a
violence?
problem, right? Like if you when you list
Right.
it all like that, you're like, oh well, damn, maybe there's something there.
You know, over a third of presidents in the 20th century experienced assassination attempts.
Reagan was attempted assassination too. Gerald Ford
Over
was
a
an attempted
third
assassination.
of presidents in 100-year span. Now, granted, that's, you know, a president generally every 4 to 8 years, right? And FDR was 3 terms during that period of time. There's a professor covering she out of Princeton that says, you know, American voters are actually less ideologically polarized than you would otherwise think. Her name is Rachel Kleinfeld. She's from Carnegie, the Carnegie Endowment of Peace. And what she says is most partisans hold major beliefs about the other party's preferences that lead them to think, like we talk about cognitive biases, this is littered, to think there is far less shared policy belief. This perception gap is highest among progressive activists, followed closely by extreme conservatives. In other words, the people who are most involved in civic and political life hold the least accurate views of the other side's beliefs.
Well, I mean,
In
I
the
think
60s and oh, go ahead.
well, no, it ties in a lot to the horseshoe theory of politics as well, right? As the more extreme sides are, the closer together they end up pushing.
In the 60s and 70s, and this woman from Princeton, last name Boyle, says in an article published in NPR or PBS, in the 60s and 70s, there's a lot of political violence, right? MLK was assassinated, JFK was assassinated,
Malcolm X,
Malcolm X was
Fred
assassinated, like,
Hampton.
right? Keep it going, right? Yet, most mainstream politicians in that era, this is a quote from Boyle, outside of the Jim Crow South, avoided violent rhetoric. That's no longer the case.
That sadly is true. I mean, in the wake of the Kirk assassination, there were a lot of politicians who were very quick to place blame before we had any idea about the identity of the shooter.
We had no information. In fact, it's not just Facebook and social media. It's our president, it's our
Yeah.
senators, right?
It's incredibly dangerous, I think,
It's
and it's worth saying that it's incredibly dangerous to make such generalizations and accusations without any sort of foundational evidence. And I do not see very
we
much
talked
like walking that back either, right? It seems like they're
no,
almost ready to double down.
we talked about it last week. It's a logical fallacy, right? And what's the point of political violence at the end of the day? It's a concentration or a fight for shared power, right? I'm either trying to keep it or I'm trying to gain it. Because that's what politics in a democracy are, right? I mean, our country is founded on rebellion.
But there is a third rail in this that I don't think we've talked about, and sometimes people are just not there. They don't have necessarily coherent political ideology that they're trying to execute. Sometimes they're just disturbed individuals who act out in violence because they lack other methods of dealing with their thoughts or their problems or their mental issues.
Facts. Absolutely. And just, you know, and while it might be political violence because it's a political target, the underlying motivations of that target, I mean, could very well be on that third rail, right? And and we don't know. And at the end of the day, I think really what it comes down to is that we as an American society are right now doing what we always do. We're super hungover.
Mm,
We got blasted last night and we're
yeah.
on the down. We're miserable, throwing up.
Americans are binge drinkers too. So this
Yeah.
whole analogy is
Well,
really aligning very.
it's very good. We're throwing up and we're telling our friends we're never going to drink again.
Never
This
again.
has to stop. Never going to
Swearing to
do
the
it
porcelain
again.
god.
And then we feel better. And we do it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. And our friends are looking at us saying, he's got a problem. But what we're doing right now is, first of all, as friends, we're not saying anything to our friend or family member. The people that are saying something are the strangers down the street that I've never met before.
Canadians look at us like we're crazy.
Right? And they're the ones going, hey, your buddy's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And we're like,
You
hey, you can't talk about my family that way.
you
Only
good,
I can
bro?
talk about my family that way. Right?
Yeah.
And it's
No,
being called out.
yeah. I mean,
And yet
maybe it's
there's
time
total resistance. Go
for an
ahead. Sorry.
intervention. Well, maybe it's time for an intervention. Maybe that's the key. I mean, again, to bring it back to the top, it's like you're not going to solve these things unless you admit that you have a problem and you start to work on it.
Yeah, I think we all have to reconcile with this. Like, we all have to sit with this conversation and say, there's no place for this in politics, right? We all have to. And we have to, if we all agree on that, then we all have to sit back and say, okay, it's been this way for a while. It's not one party, right? There's just like, okay, there have been a litany of things. And generally speaking, when you look at the list of all the political violence, it is the party that doesn't want things to change. Right? Like, it is the party that wants to hold on to the way things are. When slavery changes, political violence, lynchings, things become legal to kill and hurt other people. And we all accept it, and postcards go out. Right? Hey, come check out our lynching of this young male who talked to a white woman. Right? Like, and then we move. And then all of a sudden we try to move forward, civil rights, MLK, JFK.
And at that time,
Right?
there was a lot of the left using political violence as well to get things
I
to
mean,
change. Out
Malcolm
of
X was actively promoting it, right? Like,
that
that
was
was
part
the
of the
big
rhetoric
divide
for sure.
between he and MLK. Yeah, right. Fight the power. And there is that other element of political violence that is fighting to gain access. This is a part of the democratic system that we have. If we don't want it to be, then the intervention needs to be from inside the family. We need to start saying, shh. I want them to stop saying it, but hey, when your president of the United States comes out and instantly says the liberal lunatics of the left that are coming out and doing all of this stuff, you have to go inside the house and say, hey, dude, stop it.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that we haven't really mentioned, but that is ultimately part of this country has a lust for guns. And guns make the job easier. You can't kill somebody from 200 yards with a knife. You know what I mean? The access and
Unless you
our
have a really
obsession with
good
these
arm.
weapons is part of the issue. I mean, I'm not condoning in any way what happened, obviously, but there is a quote going around where Charlie Kirk says that a certain amount of deaths are acceptable in order to have a Second Amendment that allows us to protect our other God-given rights. That mentality to me is problematic. It undergirds the use of violence for political tools, right? Which is ultimately what happened to him.
What a great point. That statement, it is not taken out of context. Like that is, it's said multiple times. It is a position that was held. And I think this is the interesting element of this as we close up on this episode. Is a perpetuation of violence to maintain the political rights that you have. It begs the question, which, by the way, is a logical fallacy. It does beg the question to wonder, like, is it something that has no place in America? Or is it something that only has a place if you're winning? Because let me say this, I guarantee you 1000%, and I hate me for saying it, if Charlie Kirk were alive today and you asked him a certain amount of deaths are necessary to maintain those God-given rights, and you asked him, does that include you? As all of us would say is no. It's other people dying that keep my rights. The math just doesn't work that.
I mean,
so if
we
we're
have
going to
to
reconcile, and yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, we have to deal with the fact that we're a little drunk on the violence, and now it might be a good time to get sober.
Yeah, I mean, we need to, and we all have to say, like, I would love all the comments in this episode, like for however many people will tune into it, to say, I am an American and I'm an alcoholic, right? Like, not to shed light on alcoholism, but like, I don't have another word for political violence that's simple, but like, I am an American and I'm addicted to political violence. Like, we are this. Stop saying we aren't. And now let's fix it.
We're going to leave it here for this week. It's another conversation that I think is important to have right now, even though not a lot of people will have it because people are so interested in sound bites and yelling at the screen, and that's what draws the attention. But again, it ain't really doing it. It's not really getting anything solved. So this is the More in Common podcast,
it's
y'all.
Not fixing anything.
You know what I'm saying?
Like, share.
Do better.
Mate.
Like,
Cool.
share, comment. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of comments on this one.
Oh, I can't wait.
And we'll see you all.
I stand by this episode very strongly.
Very strong.
Thank you for bringing it up. Yep.
We'll see you all next week, guys.